Good afternoon from Nicky and from me, from Castle Goring. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover, so if I may, I'm going to plunge right in without further ado. Okay, so Julianne says, Dear Lady C, I see that Harry and Megladoom, some of you come up with the most wonderful names, have not said a word of congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen and Camilla for her title of Queen Consort. He has now come out and said he wants to take on his mother's work/role in AIDS. It seems to me he jumps on any bandwagon and thinks he's a guru, the way he is lecturing us about things he knows little of. He has no qualifications of any sort, no degrees in mental health issues, yet is telling us to meditate, etc. Do you think their silence speaks volumes as to how they are distancing themselves from the monarchy, to reinvent themselves as Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa? Oh dear, oh dear. You do take the name of Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa in vain. Actually, no, you take Meghan and Harry's names in vain. How can you compare them to Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa, the self-sacrificing nun, when Mahatma Gandhi and Mother Teresa are well known to have not been anywhere near as self-sacrificing as Dare H and Megsy Baby? I think that's very naughty of you. Well, if I may make the point, being serious for a moment. In California, you need no qualifications to be a coach or a life coach. Harry can coach anybody as to how they can make a success of their lives from the vantage point of ignorance as he continues to cock up his life. So that's one way of looking at it. Are they distancing themselves from the monarchy? They have distanced themselves from the monarchy, because the monarchy has distanced itself from them. I mean, Harry and Meghan really would not have distanced themselves from the monarchy, given half a chance. But they've not been given that half a chance. And therefore, they have to be hustling those busy buns to make themselves a shed load of money, to keep those 16 thrones flowing freely so that they don't get clogged up with any of the contributions Harry and Meghan make to them and to us. I think it's as simple as that. What's really interesting to me is that Harry and Meghan keep on actually revitalizing subjects that are in some ways dead subjects. And no pun intended, but Diana is a dead subject. HIV is no longer a fashionable subject. But since they can't come up with any niche that is going to actually work in their favor, they are coming up with old niches. And instead of having a statue of, say, Diana, there's going to be a statue of Meghan and or Harry. To me, it's really rather interesting, because I actually, to answer this question, I looked at that clip of Harry. Embarrassing. I mean, Diana did some sterling work with AIDS and to help to take the stigma away from AIDS. But you know, it is a myth to say that Diana was the first royal who was involved with AIDS. Princess Margaret was. Princess Margaret used to go to the lighthouse long before Diana had any interest whatsoever in the subject of AIDS. Also, my brother Mickey allowed Arnold Gordon, who was a friend of his and a wonderful man, to start Blackliners, which was the AIDS helpline stroke charity for the black community in Britain in the mid-80s, long before Diana had anything to do with AIDS. You know, when you listen to Harry, you'd think that Diana is the person who not only discovered AIDS, but actually ended up curing it. She did wonderful work, and I don't want to take that away from her, because she really did wonderful work. And she did some really important things, like touching AIDS victims at a time when people thought you could get AIDS by touching people. Well, she knew better, and she was very tactile, and so she did the right thing. But she was not in the first wave, either royally or nationally. She was in the second wave. And when Harry speaks about taking over Diana's legacy and tries to make AIDS into a bigger factor than it is nowadays, you wonder, is he trying to use AIDS for his benefit, or is he going to be making a contribution to people who suffer from AIDS? I know what my thoughts are on that subject, and I suspect I know what a lot of your thoughts are on that subject as well. You know, Harry is really pathetic. I mean, bigging himself up in, you know, that he is going to take over Diana's mantle and save people. And he's going to also become a life coach. And we have Serena Williams to confirm that he is her life coach. Serena doesn't have a problem without referring to Harry about it. I wonder, maybe that's why her career as a tennis player is going to tank. Or is it the curse of Meghan? Because evidently when Meghan went and visited her and watched her playing tennis, Serena, according to certain people who know her, she thinks that Meghan is a jinx. How true that is, I leave you to ask yourself. It may just be apocryphal, but I thought it was rather funny. Anyway, I think the whole thing is pretentious piffle, and quite frankly, it's Yawnsville. Jonelle, dear Lady C, what do you think of the link between BetterUp and the Queen's Commonwealth Trust? I think it is disturbing that the CEO of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, Chris Kelly, said they are working in collaboration with BetterUp. Isn't this a commercial endorsement? Yes, that statement was a commercial endorsement, but my understanding is that it was an unintended commercial endorsement. It was intended to be harmless. You know, the Queen's Commonwealth Trust and BetterUp are not in a partnership. They are not in continuous collaboration. If you read what I read on the Queen's Commonwealth Trust website, It says 3 people for a session. Very limited. And it said what a good contribution it was. And I'll tell you how these things work. You know, Harry was the president, I think, and Meghan was the vice president until their positions were revoked by the Queen. Harry, as the ex-president, goes to the Queen's Commonwealth Trust and says, I'm doing this. This is going to be very helpful. I'm offering you a few sessions. What do you think? They think, wonderful. This is where Harry and Meghan's commercial activities, and quite frankly, what one could call their rank commercialism, backfires not only on them, but on the royal family generally, and the reputation of the royal family, and indeed the reputation of the charity. But there are so many questions on this subject because it's caused such outrage that I'm not going to cover the whole of this subject myself. I'm going to cover it question by question. I have to tell you, when people say that the viewers on this channel are the most sophisticated, well-educated, balanced and knowledgeable on YouTube, I may not be an expert on what's going on other channels, but I know what's going on this one. And I have to say, the quality of input is superb. And the level of rationality, the obvious education, the obvious care and thought that goes into questions is just absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So, without further ado, Vicky Greenwood says, have you heard that BetterUp has been added to the Queen's Commonwealth Trust website? Is this true? Has the Royal Foundation really transferred funds to Harry for his profit business? Is Charles funding Harry? Does the Queen know about this? Well, those are 4 questions. So, if I may, I'm going to take them one by one. The Queen's Commonwealth Trust is not an official royal, in quotes, charity. It is the Queen's personal charity to enhance the Commonwealth, her links with the Commonwealth, to help with the Commonwealth. So it's not really a British charity. It is her personal charity for the Commonwealth. I think it's important to make that point. It's also important to make the point that the casual, almost, the slight mention made on the website is being blown out of all proportion. You know, they're not in partnership with BetterUp. Maybe Harry and Meghan's PR people are spinning it. Maybe Harry and Meghan's followers are spinning it. But they can spin till they're blue in the face. It's not anything more than standard stuff when you're dealing with charity work. BetterUp has not been added to the website. It was an ordinary mention. The Royal Foundation has not transferred funds to Harry for his profit business, and that business's, shall we say, commercial use. The Royal Foundation transferred funds which had originally come from his mother's will to Travelist, which, because Harry moved to America and because he was setting up various entities, let's put it that way, the money was transferred there. And by the look of it, it has not been transferred to the Archewell wing, which is charitable, of their entity or entities. I'm groping for the words that they use to stay well within the law. There have been questions asked, there have been investigations made, and so far no one has been able to say that there has been any impropriety or misuse of funds. However, this is something that it would behoove Harry to clear up. Charles is definitely not funding Harry. Anybody who saw the Oprah interview should know that. But I can tell you he's definitely not funding Harry, which is one of Harry's big resentments. And no, my understanding is, and I asked, that the Queen would have known, and I knew the answer incidentally, that the Queen would have known nothing about the posting and knew nothing about the posting. Listen, she's a busy woman. She reigns in several different countries. She is the head of the Commonwealth and takes a very active and personal interest in it. She, therefore, is the head of a Commonwealth of several billion people with millions of concerns. Do you really think she has time to be nitty-grittying it, so to speak, and checking on each and every post that some member of a charity that she's involved with makes, because her grandson, who was the president of the charity, has offered that he's going to give that charity 3 sessions. I mean, come on, let's try to keep a sense of proportion about all of this. Casey says, BetterUp is featured prominently on the Queen's Commonwealth Trust website. They supposedly partnered with each other, and they even have a section where they mention Prince Harry, the chimp of BetterUp, not the champ, the chimp. You could have said the chump as well. It makes it seem that the royal family is still supporting them and their projects and promoting this new snake oil treatment. Well, I would say that there are elements that are disturbingly oily. Let's put it that way. Oh, it's a commercial enterprise. I mean, normally, people who go into the caring professions, the medical profession, are rarely supposed to be going in for love of their fellow human being. This is about making money. Let's make no mistake about it. This is about neat packaging, sort of Chinese food crackers solutions to life. Crack open the Chinese cracker and out comes the platitude. So, but it's not to the extent that you think it is. It was effectively a throwaway comment. It's not the big entity and the big deal that people seem to think it is. Doubtless Harry and Meghan's PR people have alighted upon this and are pumping it up for all it's worth. But You know, I'll tell you the way charities work. They can be quite innocent, but once bitten, twice shy. I don't think we're going to see the person who put up that posting and who accepted Harry's kind invitation, thinking it was just a kind invitation. I don't think we're going to see many more of those postings. Once bitten, twice shy. They now know that Harry, by making the offer, has used them and has used the Queen's Commonwealth Trust to push forth for credibility and publicity his role in BetterUp, to enhance BetterUp's commercial entity. It's obvious. But you know, I don't think you're going to see much more of this happening a second time. Let's put it that way. Rachel Butler says, the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, young entrepreneurs supported by the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, have been given free access to world-leading coaches by global experts BetterUp. Who is paying the fees? The Queen's Commonwealth Trust? Seriously, big block capitals. Lying to the nation or sleight of hand or smoke and mirrors is a bad idea of Her Majesty. It stinks. I feel lied to, cheated, supporting Harry after how he treated and attacked Britain and the institution of our royal family. Harry is not cut off and is being supported. Harry talking to the world about mental health when he is suffering mental health, I think you might mean illness, and in no position to advise. What Harry actually knows of mental health you could write on the back of a stamp. Harry should not be encouraged as he is dangerous in my view. What do you think of all of this, Lady C? Oh dear, well, this is very hard-hitting stuff. And first of all, no one's paying any fees. Harry knew that by offering them 3 freebies, and they mention it on the website, sooner or later, it was going to come to the public's attention, and it would grab attention and get them a lot of free publicity, which is what has happened. You could actually say it's a cynical move on Harry's behalf to exploit his grandmother's personal charity in the completely bold and brazen way he has to get publicity for his business partners. And do you begin to see why the royal family is not supposed to get involved in commercial activities? Do you see the conflict? Do you see how it smacks of kickbacks and it smacks of a sleight of hand? And yes, I would say one of the 3 choices that you have given me would be, if it's anything, it's a sleight of hand. I don't think it was an act of generosity. And I really think they were ambushed. I think they blundered into this, they being the charity. You know, he offers them free treatment, they accept it. you can't really blame them. And they put it up. That's what charities do. I give a charity something, and if I want the recognition, they will give it to me. That's how charities work. Whether it's Harry, me, you, or anybody else, that's how it works. That's why the best givers give anonymously or quietly or silently, not like Harry and Meghan. I'm so charitable. I'm just so charitable. Oh, gosh, I'm so marvellous. I'm going to knock Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi right off their perches. Well, Harry is not being supported by the royal family financially. So I think we can knock that one on its head. He said he wanted to leave to achieve financial independence. He wanted half in, half out. He's already and Meghan, they have created sufficient muddles being made to be totally out. Can you imagine the havoc they would have created had they been allowed half in, half out? What has happened with the Commonwealth Trust BetterUp association, slight as it is, would have been everywhere, everything. It would have been absolute chaos. And I agree that Harry knows nothing about mental health, and that what he knows could be written on the back of a stamp, and that his pontifications are dangerous. I think they are, but we need to remember he thinks that because he is a prince, he is entitled to tell us what to do. And remember, those of us who don't agree should be muzzled. Because remember, free speech is bonkers. JG says, I saw an article from Forbes in early 2021 which discusses Serena Williams' husband investing in BetterUp. Serena is supposedly Meghan's best friend. At the same time, Harry is named Chief Idiot Officer or Impact Officer or whatever. And recently Serena says that Harry is her life coach. No, there's no financial backpatting among friends going on at BetterUp, is there? Is this a joke? It's a very sick joke, but it's laughable. But it's not funny. One hand scratches the other person's back, and then the other person's hand scratches your back. That's how they are doing it. And remember, these people are not producing anything. They're not artists painting pictures, writers writing books, dressmakers making dresses, tailors making suits, artisans making items. They are very practiced sharp commercial entities using their fame to increase their fortune and hopefully enhance their fame at the same time. If you saw Elmer Gantry, the movie, you'll know that selling snake oil or pat solutions is nothing new. It's been happening long before Hollywood even existed. And I dare say it will continue to happen even after Hollywood no longer is the factor that it is in our lives. Unfortunately, conduct like this compromises the reputation and the integrity of the royal family. It's time the family faced the fact that the experiment that they talked about when they allowed Harry and Meghan to leave for a year with a review at the end of that period should be looked at again, because the experiment has failed. Everything they have touched has turned to mud. Any contribution, I will actually say, as opposed to thing, any contribution they make muddies rather than clarifies the waters. Now, I don't know how they're going to cope, because if they don't come back into the royal fold and no one wants them back, and when I say no one, I mean practically no one. How will they earn a living if they're not, because they're not qualified for anything except mudslinging and, shall we say, manure shooting. But their commercial activities are harming the reputation of the royal family. And that's why, if they persist, the royal family needs to take steps to protect itself and its reputation against what has now become too much of an ongoing saga. Laura G says, BetterUp is a reheat of ESP and ineffective management self-improvement seminars, only created to shake down credulous dupes who have too much money and no common sense. BetterUp. I do wish people wouldn't use initials. I really struggle with anagrams of all kind. BetterUp will either get caught out in a scandal or sold for ridiculous money and then implode. I suspect it will be the latter. You know, after Harry's appointment as Chief Impact Officer, I think they raised $300 million because of the links to the royal family. I have nothing against people making money, and I have nothing against people who need help getting it. But whatever happened to the good old days when you asked a friend, a loved one, a priest, a nun, even a doctor, and certainly a therapist? Now, even illness, because we're speaking about illness, not health, is being packaged as a commodity for sale. I don't really know what to say more than I agree. I remember when I was young, EST, it wasn't ESP, it was EST, was a huge thing. And people would say that if they paid however many £100 or £1,000 after the third session, every single one of their problems would slough off the way a snake sloughs off its skin, or Meghan and Harry slough off their latest cock-up. And a friend of mine actually paid for me to go with him to a meeting in Mayfair. And he was raving about it and had been raving. I thought, excuse me, you know, somebody's just inflicted a 6-inch or a 16-inch wound and you're expecting a band-aid to solve the problem. But of course, everybody got caught up in the enthusiasm of the moment. And, you know, the personal attention as well that comes with these things. But if you've had real problems, which fortunately I was blessed enough to have when I was young enough to overcome them, so I learned what personal problems and what real solutions really are all about when I was very young. And so I was never going to be a candidate for snake oil, whether it was est or any of those other pat solutions. Yeah, I think it's a band-aid and it will go. I don't think it will do a great deal of harm. I really don't. I think it might do a little bit of harm, but ultimately, there's so much assistance out there for people who want to be healthy. You know, there are books of philosophy. There are all different sorts of programs now on the internet with some really rather good people. Knowledge is out there. And what is therapy? Therapy is the facilitator that leads you to the light. But you have to open your eyes. You have to look. You have to learn the lessons. So I suspect for most people, it's not going to be much of a game changer. It will make them feel better for a week or two. And maybe sometimes that's a good thing. Maybe that's all they need. But for really serious problems, if you've got cancer, go to the Sloan Kettering. Don't go to the corner shop and buy paracetamol. I think that's the analogy. KY says, does no one feel sorry for Meghan Markle living with Harry? Oh dear. KY, I love you. That's very funny. Well, I would feel sorry for Meghan because really living with a dolt when you're brighter is a penance. I can tell you, I've done it. However, if you're a dominatrix and you have contempt for your underlings, well, you're actually having Christmas Day every day of the year because you have somebody to dominate who you are superior to, or you think you're superior to, and certainly in many ways you are that person's superior. Well, what can I tell you? Santa comes every single day, and Santa brings all sorts of presents. All that wonderful contempt that you feel. So, do I feel sorry for her? I don't think so. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think if I'm feeling sorry for anybody, it's for him. Because I think he is more genuinely engaged than she is. And that, I think, is part of his tragedy. Foggy Cubty says, this must be, I hope, a nom de plume. Hilarious how Montecito Palace has turned out to be next to an ocean of festering bird poo, the 4-letter word that begins with S. How appropriate. Yes. And Montecito neighbour says, Lady C, I'm hearing that Meghan and Harry want to sell their house because the stench from a nearby wildlife bird sanctuary wafts in their direction. Don't you think it appropriate that two such, and again they use that four-letter word beginning with S, but we will say poo shooters, are inconvenienced by the stuff they manufacture? Well, Harry and Meghan are the experts on manure, let me tell you. You know, they are the experts on manure. So, I think it's called poetic justice. And the interesting thing is, they must have complained, because you see, these people can't help. They can't help complaining about everything, even when it is in their interest to shut their mouths. You could actually say it's really ridiculous, because their loquaciousness, their inability to ever put a sock in the spewing forth that goes on a daily basis, gets them into trouble, even when they don't intend to be in trouble. Now, I do not think that Harry and Meghan, even they, will have been dumb enough to have led people to believe that they want to get rid of their house because it stinks at certain times. I mean, that would be an act of complete folly. Well, we all know he's not very bright, but she's a slick operator, my dear, and let me tell you something. I don't for a second believe that she would have wanted this to get out. But they spend their whole life evidently complaining about everything and everyone. And also, I know from people who live in Montecito that they are not popular. That in fact, their neighbours find them a massive pill and don't like swallowing pills. So who knows? The fact it's got out, I would imagine a likely explanation is that somebody who doesn't like them, but doesn't mind them living there, is the one who's made sure that the inconvenience of the stench, but isn't it interesting? Meghan wrote a book on the stench. Do you remember the name Meghan's book? That book about that little boy sitting on the stench? Oh, sorry, the bench. Sorry, I got the wrong word. Yeah, she didn't write the stench, she wrote the bench. But the bench bombed like a bad stench. Maybe she was thinking of the bird sanctuary when she was writing about H, that wonderful father, sitting on the bench that had such a stench. Elisa Stocchetti says, Dear Lady C, I wish to draw your attention to the fact that the title Defensor Fidei was given to King Henry VIII by Pope Leone X in 1521 and to Queen Catherine of Aragon in her own right as well. This title was issued to the king as an acknowledgement of Assertio Septem Sacramentorum, a book written by Henry VIII in which, among other things, he defended the sacrament of matrimony and the supremacy of the Pope. When in 1534 the king pushed the Act of Supremacy, Pope Paulo III revoked the title and excommunicated Henry VIII. It is legitimate to conclude that to this day the old title of Defensor Fidei does not belong to the British monarchs. Thank you for your videos and greetings to Mickey. Mickey? Elisa Stocchetti sends to say hi. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. I think I made the point the other day that really it is a title in pretense. It's not really a title to which they're entitled to. But their rationale, going back to Henry VIII, is that he was the true Catholic and the Pope wasn't the true Catholic. Because, you know, people think that Henry VIII was a Protestant. He wasn't. He died a Catholic. The Anglican Church is a Catholic church. Believe it or not. It's not a Protestant church. It is a Catholic church. It is a Catholic church that he reformed to become the titular head of. So he made himself the supreme governor of the Church of England, replacing the Pope, who he called the Bishop of Rome. So I suppose that is the British monarchy's rationale for using a title which really is a title in pretense and nothing else. William Evans says, Dear Lady C, many thanks for once again speaking the truth. Regardless of the rights and wrongs within the marriage between Prince Charles and Diana, do you think Charles actually ever truly loved Diana? Or was he rightly or wrongly guided mainly by his dynastic responsibilities in marrying a woman suitable to provide an heir and spare, with the more than able assistance of Ruth Vermoy and the Queen Mother? That's a really good question, and I'm going to be brief because I don't want this to be too long. I know people who know Prince Charles very well, and I know what Diana had to say as well. And in the early days, he loved her and wanted to love her. I think my own interpretation of what everybody has said is he wanted to love her more than he actually did. But he was open to the possibility, and he at first believed he loved her. He thought she was going to be the wife that would salve his wounds, be the comfort that Camilla has been, but wasn't in those days, I hasten to add. He thought he was marrying a sweet, malleable, loving girl who loved everything that he did. And he truly went into the marriage expecting it to work and hoping it would work. She was desperately in love with him, but several people thought she was more in love with the idea than the man. So I think, without making too much of it, each of them had very genuine feelings within themselves and for the other party, but they were hopelessly unsuited. And really, that's it in a nutshell. You know, what's unsuited for one person is suited for another. And I don't think we need to cast aspersions on either party with regard to the fact that they were unsuited. They simply were terribly unsuited. But yes, he was sincere, and he did love Diana in the early days. He used to call her darling, and she used to call him darling. And they were very lovey-dovey in the early days. Look at some of the photographs, for instance, that were taken when she was pregnant with William. Look at the photographs that were taken in the Bahamas, where they are totally natural. Diana rewrote so that she would leave with her privileges intact. And to do that, she needed to say that she was unhappier with him than she was at the very outset. But there's no doubt they were wildly unsuited, and they would never have been happy together, ever. That's all there is to it. So let's just leave it at that. And while we're speaking about love, I would like to say that, show you this. Earlier this week, I went to the celebration and Thanksgiving for the life of my old friend, John Rendall. So those of you who know who I'm speaking about and who have read the book A Lion Called Christian, he had the most wonderful send-off. It was absolutely marvellous. The church was packed to capacity. It was interesting for me because, of course, I saw people I've known for nearly 50 years. And some of them, I have to tell you, have aged. I mean, I wouldn't have recognised Roddy Llewellyn, who I hadn't seen for about 10 years, because he's, I suppose once you know it's Roddy, you can see the link. But really, he doesn't really look like the young Roddy. There were loads of people there who, it was, I suppose, what you would call an old society funeral. And there was a lovely reception afterwards where everybody was exchanging wonderful stories about John and what a great guy he was. And it really was a marvellous occasion and a perfect send-off for a truly loving, sweet, kind guy. And on that note, I'll say, I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and keep the questions coming in. Remember, this can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.